This is Truth Be Told.
That not only are there reptilians here,
new evidence of UFO fleets.
We were close to nuclear war.
To help you transform so that you can live your highest truth.
We're not being told just because we're not ready for it.
Geostations of frequency, vibrational.
To help you transcend.
UFOs increase visitations. Old gods, magicians, and mystics. That's what we're going to be talking about today with author Christopher McIntosh, where we discuss his latest book, Occult Germany. Old Gods, Mystics, and Magicians. In this episode, Christopher takes us on a fascinating journey through the mystical landscape of Germany, exploring the survival and revival of old pre-Christian gods. We'll uncover the secrets of prehistoric sacred sites, ancient shamanic traditions, and the enduring folklore that has kept these ancient deities alive in the hearts and minds of the German people. In this episode, Christopher McIntosh will reveal the dual nature of the Germans' occult history, highlighting both its enlightened and dark aspects. Tune in for an enlightening exploration of Germany's mystical and magical traditions and discover how these ancient beliefs continue to shape these spiritual landscapes of today. I'm Tony Sweet with Truth Be Told. Please welcome back to Truth Be Told Studios, author Christopher McIntosh. Hello, Christopher. Welcome back.
Hey there.
Well, I'm excited. Your hand never rests. You put the pen to the paper and or maybe the typing away over there. And because where are you at now? You're in Germany?
Yes, I'm based in northern Germany near Bremen.
Nice. Yeah, I was just over in Prague and Vienna and Budapest and all that area not too long ago.
Wonderful.
Yeah, had a great time.
Cities.
Oh, beautiful cities. I can't wait to go back. So my mom's side of the family's from the Czech side. So,
oh, yes.
So, yeah, we got close. We were close to Germany, but hopefully we'll get to Germany one of these days. I may have to stop by and say hello to you. All right. So, you wrote a new book called The Occult Germany, Old Gods, Mystics, and Magicians. And so I want to kind of get started on how you choose your books. You know, we did one on Russia last time, and I want to know what's the purpose of putting these books together, because, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, that's old news, but it's not. I think it's very important that we talk about some of these ancient cultures and where, mystics come from, magicians and old gods. I think it's important because that's where we began, and a lot of ideas came from. So where do you start, and how did these books come about in the first place?
Well, my main focus as a writer has been the Western esoteric traditions. I started getting interested in those while I was still a student at Oxford. And my first entry to that field was through astrology.
Oh.
And after I left university, my first book was a book on astrology, history of astrology, called The Astrologers and Their Creed. And through writing that book, I came into contact with the broader range of the esoteric traditions. And then later on, I wrote a book on the Rosicrucian tradition. In fact, I wrote two books on the Rosicrucians. The second one was what became my doctoral thesis. And I very quickly discovered that Germany is a particularly fertile place for these traditions. It's the fountainhead of many traditions, like the Rosicrucian tradition, for example. And alchemy has always been very big in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And many interesting mystical thinkers have come out of Germany. So Germany has played a big role for me. And, well, I also got interested in Russia because I studied Russian. I worked for a time in New York at the United Nations.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, the United Nations has a very good language school where I studied Russian and took a diploma in Russian and visited Russia a couple of times. And during the course of writing another book called Beyond the North Wind, I became aware that there were all kinds of interesting, pagan and esoteric traditions in Russia, and so then I decided to devote a book to Russia. So that was my book, Occult Russia.
I have to say that was a really good book and a great interview we did because I really learned a lot. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you liked it. Well, then I thought, having done Occult Russia, that Occult Germany would be quite a natural follow-up, especially as I live in Germany.
Right.
And so. Yeah, and Germany being so rich in esoteric traditions, that I thought a book on Occult Germany would be a natural step. So that's how the book came about.
I love it, and you know what I find interesting is different timelines, and I'm curious on what are some of the key historical periods in Germany that saw like significant rises in the occult practices and beliefs in some of these old gods. Was there like a period that it was more relevant than any other?
Yes, well, a particularly rich period was the 16th and 17th centuries, and to some extent the 18th. That was the period of, for example, the great efflorescence of magic. Like you had writers like Cornelius Agrippa and Paracelsus, the great physician and alchemist. They were writing in around the 16th century, and then in the 17th century you had the Rosicrucian movement, and people like Jakob Boehme, the great mystical writer and thinker. So that was a very rich period. Then in the 18th century, you had the growth of Freemasonry in Germany and all the various sort of higher and mystical rites within Freemasonry.
Yeah.
And then really a revival comes in the 19th century, and the 19th century is also very interesting, particularly towards the end of the 19th century. But yeah, these were very rich periods in German cultural history.
And why was that? Was it more of a political or just a social change in Germany that influenced these movements?
It's an interesting question. I think it may have had something to do with the Reformation, which came. Well, it had earlier roots, but it basically started in the early 15th century. Early 16th century. The Reformation, a lot of people felt that the Reformation had not produced the spiritual renewal that they had hoped for. So then there arose a whole variety of sort of breakaway sects within Protestantism who, in a way, try to bring about a second Reformation. And this included all kinds of mystical and esoteric writers and thinkers. So I think that could be one reason why that period was so rich.
What was the leadership like then, and how did they embrace it or not embrace these new thoughts and theories?
That's a difficult question to answer.
Because even here in America, when it comes to the Salem witches, they burned them at the stake and all kinds of different things. So I didn't know if, politically there's, a lot of the leadership, if they embraced it or if they, had a negative reaction towards it.
Well, I think that it had all sorts of repercussions.
Yeah,
including politically. I mean, one example that I've written about in my book that came out of my doctoral thesis, which is called The Rose Cross and the Age of Reason. That deals with a neo-Rosicrucian order called the Golden and Rosy Cross. And a leading member of that order was King Frederick William II of Prussia. And he was a very keen member of this Rosicrucian order. He was also an alchemist. And yes, there's a nice Rose Cross motif. King Frederick William II, he had a couple of advisors who were also members of the order, and they were politically very conservative. And so during his reign, a variety of conservative measures were introduced. So his reign was, in a way, an attempt to reverse some of the effects of the Enlightenment. His predecessor, his uncle Frederick the Great of Prussia, had been a proponent of the Enlightenment, and it brought in various Enlightenment measures, which King Frederick William II then attempted to reverse many of them. Yes, there he is. So that's one example of how these how certain esoteric ideas impinged on politics.
All right.
And the Rosicrucian movement of the 17th century also had political implications.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's some people. I was talking about having you on, and in Greek, in the Greek mythology, there's so many different types of gods, and many other. In Egypt, there's many different types of gods, and I'm curious, and this is kind of the fun part, and a little bit of switch in our conversation of who are some of the most prominent old gods in the Germanic mythology that influenced, the occult. Because we don't really hear much about these old gods from Germany versus, like Egypt and Greece and Rome and all that stuff.
Well, you see, if you're a pagan in Germany, there's a problem because there are very few sources that you can go to.
Right.
One of the sources is the text by the Roman author Tacitus, written around the 1st century AD, and called Germania. And in that text, Tacitus gives quite a detailed picture of the Germans and their beliefs, their practices, their conventions, and also their religion and their gods. And so he says, for example, that they worship the equivalent of the Roman god Mercury, who for the Germans was Odin. And he describes a form of divination which was probably the runes. So that's one source. But apart from that, there's very little. There are two very, very short texts of just a few lines each, called the Merseburg Spells, and one of them describes healing Baldur, the god Baldur's horse, which had become lame, broken its leg, and so there's a spell to heal the horse's leg. And the other one is about how to free yourself from chains. But those the only two German texts that we have. Apart from that, there are sort of customs that have been handed down through the ages, and there are the Nordic texts. There's the Edda and the sagas. So you have to rely on those, really.
Yeah.
So in terms of actual deities, they're mentioned in the Edda, Odin and Thor and Freya and so on. And I think for example of the days of the week. So you have Thursday in German is Donnerstag, literally thunder day, obviously named after the thunder god Donner or Thor, and Friday named after Freya, the Nordic love goddess. So there are various customs that have been inherited from the pagan times, but so it's all. If you were to try to reassemble the old pagan religion today, you have to put it together from a whole lot of different bits and pieces.
And have you tried to do that?
Well, yes, to some extent.
Oh, okay. Here I was teasing, and he did. Well, what was your take on doing research on some of these a few gods that that you did your research on? What was your take on their effect, their impact on society of that time?
Well, are you talking about pre-Christian times?
Yes.
Or the pre-Christian times? What was their effect? Well, we have to really go to Tacitus to get a picture of what German society was like at that time. And the picture we get of them is, well, sometimes they're portrayed as primitive barbarians. There's a famous treatise by a French woman Madame de Stael, l'Allemagne. And she basically describes them as primitive savages who were, they were essentially, they didn't essentially become civilized until, well, they were partly civilized by the Romans, but then properly civilized by Christianity. But the picture we get from Tacitus is they were actually in many ways quite admirable. They were monogamous. They were extremely respectful of women and so on. And when we look at their remains, we see that they were actually quite advanced. And so it really belies the idea that the people of Northern Europe were primitive barbarians before the Romans came.
Well, we talked about the gods, and I also know very important is the human leadership, not political, but the mystics and the magicians. Can you talk about some of the prominent figures of that time, of the people that were leading the way?
Well, one key writer was Cornelius Agrippa, who was writing around the 15th to 16th century, roughly. And he wrote a number of books that have become sort of classic works on occultism. De Occulta Philosophia was one of them. So he's a key person. Yes, there he is.
He looked tough.
And yeah. So then there was let's see. Paracelsus, of course, is another key figure, writing a little later. He was a very key figure because he was a physician and an alchemist, but he was also very interested in theology, and he in fact wrote almost as much about religion as he did about medicine and alchemy. And he spoke about there being two lights, the light of nature and the light of the scriptures. So you could go either to the scriptures, or you could go to directly to nature itself. So this made him, of course, a controversial figure,
right?
Very, very suspect to the Orthodox religious authorities. But he was a key figure in the development of alchemy, and is still considered so today. And so you'll find any number of chemists that are called the Paracelsus chemist, or clinics called the Paracelsus clinic, whatever. So he's still very much a key figure. And then the people who were involved in the Rosicrucian movement, like Johann Valentin André, who was the key person behind the circle in Tübingen, out of which the Rosicrucian manifestos emerged.
And what about Jakob Boehme?
Oh yeah, Jakob Burma, yes.
Oh, how do you pronounce it?
Jakob Burma.
I got it completely wrong.
Yeah. Well, he was very interesting because he came from the area of Silesia, which was a very traditionally a very mystical region. in southwest Germany, bordering on what is now Poland. And he was a shoemaker by profession, but he had various mystical experiences which he wrote about. And what's interesting about Burma is that he among other things, he said that we have two bodies. We have an earthly body and we have an astral body or a stellar body. And this concept of the stellar body or the astral body later passed into esoteric tradition with people like the French magician Eliphas Lévy, who used the term, and it was taken up again by Madame Blavatsky. So he was a very seminal figure, Jakob Boehme.
Well, let me ask you this, because, now we have social media. So, if I'm a mystic or a psychic, or I can go on, Instagram and start building a huge following, giving readings, my theories. What was the popularity of these gentlemen then, and how did the word spread back then? Because it definitely would have had to taken a lot longer than what it takes now. What size of following did they have, and how did they spread their message?
Well, partly through publications.
Oh.
So if among the literate publication,
right,
population, the word was spread through publications, and so the printing trade was very crucial at that time. I mean, printing basically came into being around the 1440s with Gutenberg. So that was a huge breakthrough when printing was invented. So that was one way. Otherwise, by word of mouth, by small groups getting together, coming into contact with other groups, and so on. It's quite interesting the way these movements did actually spread. They spread surprisingly quickly. The Rosicrucian movement, for example, spread very quickly to other countries. So there were resonances from the Rosicrucian movement in France, in Sweden, in England, right, and in America as well.
I'm curious, because it seems like when there's a movement like this, there's something lacking in society. I mean, we're seeing that right now in our here in America, in our politics and our religion, that people are always searching. So what was it at the time that changed the average person's mind to start looking into the occult versus, Christianity, which was, it's huge, everywhere. So I was curious of what, I mean, we weren't there, so we don't know, but maybe in your research that you've done, what was the people going through at that time to look in a different direction than religion?
Yeah, I think that's quite a complex question.
Yeah. If we had a time capsule, we could go back and...
Yeah. Well, I think that the motivation was different from one place to another.
Right.
I mean, if you were in Italy, for example, if you were in Catholic Italy, you might. I mean, Jocelyn Godwin has written an interesting book called "The Pagan Dream of the Renaissance," in which he argues basically that if you were an educated person in Italy at that time, at the time of the Renaissance, you wouldn't be satisfied with the doctrines of the church. and you would look elsewhere. But you had to be careful, of course. But you could find ways of honoring the ancient pre-Christian deities.
Right.
For example, by putting statues of them in gardens. So that was one way where one direction in which it went. In Protestant Germany, as I said, I think one motivation was that a lot of people felt that the Reformation, the Lutheran Reformation, had not brought about a spiritual renewal that had been hoped for, and something new was needed. So, and this was the motivation behind the Rosicrucian movement, essentially. So yeah, those are some of the motivations, I think.
Right. And also, like I said, when I was over in Europe, and we know this pretty much any ancient civilization, that the art, the petroglyphs, hieroglyphs, you can kind of tell what era that they were in just from the art and the literature. And so when did, like you said, or do you see that now when you're in Germany, when you go to different places, can you see like the era of the occult in their architecture and their literature and their, these museums with, ancient art hung on these beautiful museums? So can you see that now, even in today?
You mean in terms of
the influence? The influence of the occult from that era. Do you see that even in buildings that still stand from that era, that were built in that era?
Yes, there are some examples. I mean, one example would be Heidelberg Castle. Heidelberg Castle was the seat of the Elector Frederick V of the Palatinate. And he was involved in the Rosicrucian movement. So at one point, Heidelberg was almost a kind of, yes, there you can see the castle. Heidelberg was, in a sense, at one point, almost a Rosicrucian court.
Interesting.
One aspect of that was the garden that he had built next to the castle, which was designed by a French architect called Salomon de Caus, who was a very, very remarkable man, a real sort of Renaissance figure, who was an architect, an engineer, a philosopher. And there you see the garden.
That's amazing.
A really
by the
remarkable place. It's absolutely packed with esoteric symbolism, and it's very much in the Rosicrucian spirit, the holistic spirit of incorporating religion, art, and science.
Wow. And for the people, real quick, for the people that are listening to the podcast, go to our YouTube channel and you can see this, or just look up Heidelberg Castle Garden and you can see this. It's amazing.
Yeah, so as you can see, there were labyrinths, there were parterres laid out, corresponding to musical intervals, and there were fountains and grottos with automata, statues that played tunes, and all sorts of remarkable things. Unfortunately, Frederick, the Elector Frederick, during the 30 Years' War, he decided to basically go to war with the Habsburgs, and he was defeated in a battle in 1620, and he had to flee and go to Holland. He went into exile in Holland, and the castle and the gardens were bombarded and very heavily damaged, and over time, subsequently, the gardens fell into ruin. But if you go there today, it's there's quite a lot that you can still see, but it's basically it's basically a ruin with some elements.
I would have loved to have seen that.
Yeah, you can still get a feel of what it was like.
With everything you've done your research on, is there any one particular like myth or a figure or an event in the history of Germany occult that you find most fascinating? Is there one that just really stood out to you that you connected to?
Well, a number of things. I got interested at one point in King Ludwig II of Bavaria, and in fact I wrote a biography of him called The Swan King. And of course, his great partner, his great patron was the composer Richard Wagner, and so I also got interested in Wagner, and I just became absolutely Wagner's music just absolutely blew my mind. When I first heard a Wagner opera, it just sent me into space. So I became a great Wagnerite, and there are esoteric elements in Wagner's operas, like the whole concept of the Grail, the symbol of the Grail, which plays such an important role in especially in his opera called Parsifal. So I think for me that would be his work would be the one thing that really inspires me.
That's
also certain German writers like Gustav Meyrink, who wrote a series of remarkable occult novels set in Prague, and also Hermann Hesse.
I love that. This
his series.
I just find it fascinating. I find this ancient, religions, ancient cultures very fascinating. In fact, I even started a nonprofit. It's called Earthly Beings Foundation, and it's people can go to the website earthlybeings.org, and it's all about bringing the ancient cultures into the modern world, because I feel that a lot of this is getting lost. It's, we want to highlight and preserve these cultures. So please, people, if you want to join this preservation of, amazing content from not just hundreds of years, but thousands of years, that we'd love to have you a part of it. But by saying that is, a lot of it's getting lost or diluted as we go forward in time, and people don't realize how much of this has influenced our current society. Look at even paganism, with Christmas was rooted off many of the of what paganism started. So, and people they always say, oh, it's about Jesus and Christianity. Well, yeah, there's an aspect to it, but many of the, Christmas trees and all kinds of different, even Santa, there's a lot of Germanic tribes, that brought this into fruition. And now it is what it is today. And asking you, what's the best way that we can preserve these beliefs going forward? Because I think it's important. You're the people like yourself that's bringing books, the Occult Germany. This is not an evil practice. This was just part of society of the time. So, how do you feel that we should preserve?
Well, these things are important, as you say, because they're part of our cultural memory.
Yeah.
And one of the problems of the modern world is that people are losing their cultural memory.
Yep.
Because unless it's kept going from generation to generation, then it can disappear almost overnight. Mm-hmm. And it's particularly a problem in Germany. The Germans have a troubled relationship with their cultural memory because of the history with the Nazi period and so on. And one of the things I'm hoping that my book will do, especially if it's translated into German, is to give the German public a renewed appreciation of this aspect of their cultural history. Because I've noticed that it's particularly lacking in Germany. I mean, I at one point I was teaching English at the University of Bremen, and in one class we got onto the subject of the Holy Grail. Well, now that to me is one of those universal references.
Right.
Yeah, you sort of, it's part of the air you breathe almost. So I asked the class if they knew what that was, and only one young guy put up his hand and he said, yes, well, I think it has something to do with rejuvenation and eternal life and so on. And that was all he knew. Otherwise, he hadn't a clue, and the others hadn't a clue at all. Well, I thought that was very sad, because it's really part of German cultural history. Yeah. The greatest of the Grail romances is Parsifal by the medieval writer Wolfram von Eschenbach. But that's one of the great classics, And then you have Wagner's treatment of the theme, and even in something like the film Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Oh, yeah.
Although in Germany, I think many people who've seen that film may have missed the point about the Holy Grail, because they don't use the title Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I don't know if you've seen the film. Have you?
It's been a long time, but yeah, I love John Cleese. I love him. So
yeah, well, there's a scene in which John Cleese is approaching a castle, and he's trying to give the impression that he's on horseback, and he has coconuts which he's banging together to make it sound like horses' hooves.
Yeah.
And in Germany, they've seized on this scene, and so they call the film the Night of the Coconuts. So they left the Grail theme out of the title. But anyway, I thought that was a bit sad that these students had no clue what the Holy Grail was. But that applies to many aspects of their cultural history. There's much of their history is just a complete blank.
Now I'm going to have to go back and rewatch that. But I mean, there's a lot. I mean, Da Vinci Code. What's the other one?
I think there's even Harrison Ford.
The Harrison
Indiana
Ford
Jones.
and Indiana Jones. Yeah, so there's a lot of films that really touched on it, and I mean, even I think Hitler was interested in trying to find the Holy Grail. I mean, according to movies and any documentaries I've I've watched over the years. So, it was definitely it's a very important piece of history. So we definitely can't lose that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we run out of time, how have you seen religion change, and how has the occult influenced religion that we may not think has, and how we worship today?
Well, there's a friend of mine, Lionel Snell, who's written a very interesting series of books on the subject of magic. And the one that has become a real classic in the esoteric scene it's got a peculiar acronym. It's called SSOTBME, which are an essay on magic, which I won't explain right now. But he has a scheme in which he ties magic in with Jung's four functions, C.G. Jung's four functions of observation, intuition, reason, and feeling. And he says religion is observation plus reason. Religion is reason plus intuition. Art is intuition plus feeling, and magic is feeling plus observation. So magic, these are not sort of separate categories. Magic is something that overlaps with all of these. And a lot of the time when we think we're doing science or religion or art, in fact, we're doing magic. And so I think that a magical way of looking at the world it's a legitimate way of looking at the world.
Mm-hmm.
And as I see it, what one is doing in magic or in performing an occult ritual, whatever, one is trying to access the deeper levels of the human consciousness or subconscious, and the way to reach those levels is not through reason or logic. The way to reach them is through symbols, gestures, ritual, and so on. There's an American psychologist, Thomas More, who has said that the soul needs regular journeys into enchantment.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so that's basically what one is doing in magic, in a magical or esoteric ritual. It's a journey into enchantment, and it's something that is often missing. It's there to some extent in the Catholic Church and especially in the Russian Orthodox Church.
Yeah.
But it's rather missing in Protestantism. Yeah, I think that this is. I don't know. I'm trying to answer your question.
You're doing a great job, and in fact, this leads me to my kind of a last question. We're seeing a huge influx of people more, because many of my friends are witches, not in a negative term, but in a positive. Like they practice witchcraft, and they're some of the nicest, sweetest people. But I'm seeing a lot of people leaving Christianity and their religions because of the judgments and everything else. They're looking for more of a community connection to the universe. And do you see that where you're at? Do you see more people looking for the occult and looking for other ways to practice their beliefs through witchcraft, through magic, through just, spirituality, as they call it, than Christianity or whatever religions they believed before?
Yeah, I do see that very much. Yes. Yes, among my own circle of friends and the people I come into contact with, I think there's a big movement in that direction.
Yeah, and I still have my beliefs in Christianity, but like I said, it's the judgments and the negativity that I see versus these other beliefs and practices that are some of the nicest people and with no judgment. So I can see where people start embracing that more. But Christopher, you're such a. I could sit and listen to you talk all day about the stuff you put together. What do you hope people take away from this book? And I'm going to show the picture and tell people again the title: Occult Germany, Old Gods, Mystics, and Magicians. And what are you hoping people take away from this book?
Well, if you mention the subject of Germany to a lot of people, all they can think of is the Nazi period.
Right.
That's all they associate Germany with. And I've mentioned it obviously in the book. I couldn't leave it out altogether, but I didn't give a lot of space to it because it's been written about ad nauseam by so many people. And I really wanted to show the immensely rich esoteric tradition that Germany has. So I think that's probably the main thing I would like readers to take away. What Germany has given to the world in terms of esoteric traditions in the broadest sense. So when you think of the whole alchemical, just when you think of the alchemical tradition, for example, and so many inspiring mystical writers, and just an immensely rich tradition. So I think that's basically what I'd like people to take away from the book. Perfect. And especially German readers, if the book is translated into German, as I hope it will be.
I'm surprised it hasn't already, but...
Yeah, I am too.
Well, you are just a wealth of inspiration and appreciate you. And people can go to your website, Ozgard, OZGARD.net, Ozgard.net. You can check out other books he's written. And do you have any other books in the works, or are you taking a little time to relax a little bit after this one?
I have another book which I've already delivered to the publisher.
Oh, wow.
Yes, so that's in the works. That's a sort of autobiography.
Oh.
It's basically a kind of spiritual autobiography, but it to some extent a general autobiography as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I can't even write a thank you note, let alone books.
Well, you never know.
You never know. You never know. I hope I do one day, but I don't know what I would talk about yet. Well, thank you, Christopher, for being here, and I can't wait to have you back again to go into more details on some either same subject or your next book. So I appreciate you.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
Of course. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in and joining us. And please, if you have questions, I'm sure Christopher would love to hear from you. So go to his website, and he's a wealth of knowledge on the, Russian and Germanic occult, the history of it. So I'm sure hopefully maybe he can even do some speaking engagements one of these days so we can see him in person. So, but thank you for tuning in every Friday right here on Truth Be Told in the Club Paranormal page. You can listen to Robert Hensley every Monday at 3 and Bonnie Burkert Wednesday at 3, and of course me right every Friday at 3. So, but thank you so much, and until next time, take care of yourself and each other. Bye. This has been another episode of Truth Be Told. Thank you so much for watching. Recorded live at UBN Go Studios in Burbank, California. Join us on social media. Facebook, Truth Be Told Radio. Instagram, Truth Be Told Paranormal. Go to Truth Be Told Worldwide for more information on upcoming shows.